Hey, good morning, everybody. Shalom, and welcome to Wednesday, March 25th, for our Torah study. I'm just opening up our prospects on Facebook as well. So please stay tuned with me. I'm opening up the Facebook live feed. Please do stay tuned with me over here. Getting ready, folks. If you're there, please introduce yourself, folks, so we can get started. Hey, Mickey.
Yeah. Can you speak 2 seconds? I'll tell you to do it.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey. I'm listening. I'm getting ready. Go ahead.
All right. Well, first of all, what do you want as the screens? You want two different Safari windows, or what do you want?
Just the same way you did it. Split screen down the middle.
All right. What you do is go to hit the green button.
Okay, hit the green button. Okay.
On the top left. You go either full screen or partial screen.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Make the partial screen a half. Then open up the next program you want to do it with, or you want to do it both in Safari.
Yeah.
All right. On Safari, go down to the dock on the bottom, right-click, and open up a new window.
Okay, new window. Gotcha. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
And just that window should be about in half, and pull it over so it's half and half.
Okay.
You can move it over.
All right. I'm not sure. All right. I'll see what to do. All right, Mickey. Thank you. I'm already going live now. Hopefully, it'll work it out.
Okay.
Mick, thanks so much.
It's easy enough to do.
Pretty simple. All right. I'm live on YouTube now. Thanks, Mickey.
All right. Sorry, I'll be on YouTube in a minute.
Thank you so much. Okay, folks, good morning. Hi, if you are already there, please announce yourself. We'd love to know who's with me in the classroom here. I'm just getting my notes here ready. It's a little technical, but we rabbis are trying our best to make sure that we have all the technical stuff available. Ouch. To survive this quarantine. Trying our best. Please stay with me for a moment here. Here it is. Okay, good. Please stay with me here. Oh, gosh. Okay. All right. And I'm going back to YouTube. Okay, good morning, Marty. I see you there, Marty. Marty's there announced, and Graciela and Robin Weiss. Good morning. Dvorah Chana is with me. This is great. Good to see you. What happened to my Facebook? Am I on Facebook? Yeah, I am. That is on Facebook. Good. Okay, great. And YouTube, do we have anybody with us on YouTube? Seems like the majority of the crowd is on Facebook. Whoever's on YouTube, please do post. Let me know. It would be lovely to hear your comments so we can see who's there. Good morning, Rob Berger. Great time last night, folks. Hey, Susan. Good morning, Shalom. Susan from Boynton. And good to be connected with everybody. Thank you for joining me for the Farbrengen last night. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I loved studying the Farbrengen with you all last night. God, the Holocaust and coronavirus with the men's Farbrengen. It was a lot of fun. I hope nobody's too mad with me for any controversial statements. It was a lot of fun. Okay, good. So here we are, and we are getting ready to go to start our Torah study again. We're starting to get the hang of this, guys, ladies and gentlemen. So if you could start to engage, start to interact. Let's try to make it a little more dynamic to keep the conversation flowing. Share your thoughts, share your comments. And thank you, Rob. Good morning. Great Farbrengen last night, indeed. A long time in the making. I'm glad we were able to pull it all together. Okay, I'm just trying one more thing to see if I can pull it together. Oh, I know what I wanted to do. I wanted to post the link to the social media Just give me a quick second. The link, I need to get it now. I'm just posting this link to social media live. Second. Posting this link to social media live. Okay, I think I got it now. Okay, good. I got the link and sharing it in 2 different places. Good. Phew. Okay, good. Okay. All right, here we are. I'm back with you, folks. Good morning. Hi, Susan, Mickey, Rob Wordheimer's there. Good morning, Rob, and Ed Hockman. Great. I see we're all coming together, and we are ready to roll. On-time departure here. Seems like Facebook is a lot more active than YouTube, which is fine, no problem. But guys, keep. I think YouTube is definitely a nice way to interact for anybody that's not Facebook oriented. And let's get going right at it. So I'm going to start off this morning as you normally do with the gates of trust. It's in the duties of the heart, and go straight to it. This is very, very powerful stuff. Very powerful stuff, and I'm going to go straight into it right now. Okay. So in case you have the book, we are on page 359 in this book, the duties of the heart. Let's go straight to it. About the benefits of trust in God. Now, trust in God, friends, takes a lot of courage. Good morning, Dean. Welcome to Torah study with us here this morning. Trust in God takes a lot of courage. This is not your run-of-the-mill faith in God. Faith in God means that you believe that there is a creator. Trust in God means that you trust that everything will be okay. It's like an insurance plan. Just like when you have insurance, you're not worried that you're going to be left high and dry. You know that no matter what happens, you will be okay. So too, when it comes to trust in God, you know that you will be okay. God will not abandon you. I'm carrying on middle of page 359 if you have the book. If not, just follow along with me. An advantage of trust in God in respect to religious life is that he who trusts in God, if he has the means, will hasten to meet his monetary obligations to God and to man with a willing soul and generous spirit. So if you have the money, you'll take care of your obligations. If he has no means, you will regard his lack of money as one of God's favors towards him. How is lack of money going to be one of God's favors towards him? For he is free of the obligation to God and to man, which money imposes. And he is spared the aggravation that is involved in maintaining it and managing it. As is told of one of the pious who used to say, "May God save me from distraction of the soul." The man was asked, "What is distraction of the soul?" He answered, "Owning property in every port and every city." This is, as our sages of blessed memory said, the more possessions, the more worry. Marbe nechasim, marbe daiga, the more possessions, the more worry. Who is wealthy? He who rejoices in his portion. So when it comes to the person that trusts in God, the person that is instilled with the realization that God provides for all of his needs, and he has nothing to worry about, never gets stressed out. If he has the money to take care of his obligations, terrific, he takes care of his obligations. I'm getting a message, start on YouTube. I am on YouTube. I wonder why Brandon can't see us on YouTube. Just texted him. In any event, when it comes to his obligations, if he has the money to take care of his obligations, he's good. If he doesn't have the money to take care of his obligations, then he says, no big deal. In other words, he doesn't get stressed out by money. That's the key. The person that trusts in God doesn't get stressed out by money. I got it, good. I don't have it, no, I guess it's going to come. The person that doesn't trust in God gets stressed out when they don't have the money that they need to be able to take care of the obligations. Because to him, he feels like, what am I going to do? He has no one else to turn to if he doesn't have the money that he needs, right? I think this speaks to the balance that the believer, the one who trusts in God, has. Because if you trust in God, then you don't feel like you are responsible for everything. You know that you have an address, you have someone to turn to. You know that you're able to turn to God to take care of you, and that you don't feel like you have to somehow be the Superman, able to create something out of nothing, to be what we spoke about, the alchemists. You know that God provides for my needs. Whatever I have is what I need, and whatever I don't have, I don't need. So the one who trusts in God knows that when you're banging down a door and the door is not opening to you, you know that what's behind that door is not what you need right now. It's not good for you. And that's why the one who trusts in God is serene, is at peace. And we quoted the verse, the Talmud, which says, "Who is wealthy? One who is happy with his lot." That's who is wealthy. If you're happy with your lot, with what you have, then you're wealthy. But a person who doesn't trust in God, who feels that money is their, in many cases, money is their God, they constantly want more. And they're constantly looking over their shoulder to see what everybody else has. And they're never, ever happy. Have you ever met a person that is satisfied with what they have? It's very few and far between. It's difficult, right? And that's why our sages say that the more possessions, the more worry. Marba nechasim, marba daiga. So this guy that we just quoted, he wanted less possessions. He wanted to have less distractions. Let's keep on going a little bit further. One who trusts in God will obtain the advantage of money, namely a livelihood, but will be spared the mental distractions of one who has money and constantly worries about it. As the wise man said, "Sweet is the sleep of the laborer, whether he eats little or much, but the prosperity of the rich man does not let him sleep." So the laborer who doesn't own the field, he goes to work 9 to 5, he checks in, he checks out, and he's good to go. But the owner is worried about what's happening when nobody's there, and is there thieves, and is anybody breaking into my field, and what about the insurance, and what about the bathrooms, and what about this, that, and the other. The owner is always very, very stressed out and very worried. There's a great story about a chassid who heard in Russia, he heard that he used to own a lot of forests. He was a wealthy man. One day he heard that all of his forests were burnt down. He took a huge financial hit. So, he looked very upset about it. But a few minutes later, they saw him sitting in the Beis Medrash in the yeshiva, and he was studying Torah. So somebody went over to him and he said, "One second, you're not worried about it? You're not worried?" And the guy looked at him and he said, "Look, what's worrying going to help me? Some people takes them a very long time for worrying. They worry for like a year. They worry for a year. But the worry doesn't do anything for them. Me, I worried for 5 minutes. I got over the worry. And now I'm back to myself. I'm studying Torah right now. So what's the problem?" And I think that's a very important word over here. That word. Just 1 second. Hello? It's my kids. Yeah? Listen, I'm in the middle of a class. Can you ask mommy? I try not to. Yes. Yeah, what? Okay, so please wake up mommy. Tell mommy the man is there, okay? Okay. Oh boy. Okay, so tell the man that mommy's coming in a minute, okay? Tell the man that mommy's coming in a minute, okay? Bye. Sorry, folks. This is the challenges of the challenges of the quarantine is not being available in 2 different places. Sorry, I do apologize, folks. Somebody was at my front door, and the kids, I suspected that they needed me. So I do apologize. I'm back with you. Okay, back here. So what I was saying is that there's a very powerful, good morning, Leah. Good morning, Stephanie. Nice to see you. Sarah Uzi, great to have you with us. And Dvorachana, sorry about that. I do apologize. These are the challenges of the quarantine. Anyways, the word worry. how much do you worry? That's the key here. The person that trusts in God doesn't even relate to the concept of worry. Worry is what happens to us when we're not focused. But when you are able to keep a balance, to find that balance, when you're able to remember your place in the universe, your place in creation, you're able to realize that worrying is not going to help me. In fact, what we're learning now in the Gates of Trust is that worry is your enemy. And that's a very important concept which I have to introduce you to. Worry is the worst thing that you could possibly do for yourself. Worry is the worst thing you could possibly do for yourself. Thanks, Mickey. Worry is the worst thing that you could do for yourself, because where there is a shred of worry, worry is the opposite of trust. You see, if you trust in God, then you're not worried. I think you can agree with me about that. That if you're trusting in God, you have no worry. It's like, let me think of an example. If you trust in your money, if you have $1 million in the bank account and you go to a restaurant and you give your credit card to pay, you're not worried that the credit card is going to decline because you trust that the money's there. So there's no worry when you pay with your credit card that the waiter's going to come back and say, sorry, there's insufficient funds in this account. You're not worried because you trust that the money's there, right? When you trust that someone is going to provide for you, a 5-year-old doesn't worry if mom and dad are going to give him a place to sleep tonight. A 5-year-old trusts that the parents will provide all of his needs. If there's a little bit of worry, it means that it's the exact opposite. It's inversely proportionate to trust. Where there's trust, there's zero worry. Where there is worry, there's not really trust. So if you trust in God, you don't have to worry, certainly not about money, because you know that God will provide what I need, when and where I need it. What I don't have, I don't need. And it's an amazing way to live life. If you could live your life worry-free, can you imagine how beautiful? Can you imagine how beautiful that existence is? That you live your life in a way that you just don't have anything to worry about. It's an unbelievable way to live life. Now, the reason that worry is so toxic is that we said at the very, very opening of the Gates of Trust, at the very first page, we said that God provides for those who trust in him. But those that trust in other things, God has them rely on those that they trust in. So if you turn your back on God, then God turns his back on you. If you trust in God, God will provide for you. If you don't trust in God, then God leaves you to the devices of those entities that you trust in. So if you don't trust in God, then you, by definition, you trust in something. I don't care any atheist I have ever met. I've always been able to see that whilst they deny their belief in God, they believe in something else. They believe in their bank account, they believe in their government, they believe in the law, they believe in monogamy or not. They believe in all sorts of other truths, even though they're denying the belief in God. At the very same time, they believe in something else. Because as human beings, we are naturally dependent. We have to believe in something. By definition, we have to believe in something. So if you're trusting in God, God will provide. But if you're exhibiting any shred of worry, it means that you don't trust in God. The worry means that you're not trusting in Hashem. If you're not trusting in Hashem, then you're, by definition, trusting in something else. And if you're trusting in something else, then Hashem removes his providence from you. That's what it says at the opening of the Gates of Trust. And that's why worry is your enemy. So you really got to work on mitigating your sense of worry. You've really got to mitigate that sense of worry. You got to really work on yourself. And I got to tell you, for me as a Jew, you really, for me, I got to tell you that I have to work on myself every single day. Spiritual service, why I have to daven every single day, because I want God's providence every single day over my life. And for that reason, I've got to be able to daven every morning. I've got to get into a spiritual zone. I've got to get into a spiritual focus. When I daven, I'm able to anchor myself, and I turn my phone off. I can get away from all the craziness from the news feeds and all the worry and anxiety that surrounds me. You know, this is what media feeds off of stressing us out and getting us nervous. There's a hurricane coming. There might be a hurricane coming. There's a little nothing off the coast of Africa that looks like a hurricane. It smells like a hurricane. It could be a hurricane. There's a pandemic coming. There's this amount of people that are going to die. There's that amount of people that are going to die. They're all trying to stress us out because they want us to be dependent on the news media. They want us to be dependent on them so that they can sell more advertising. We as Jews focus ourselves to be able to keep away from getting stressed out, so that our trust is always with Hashem. The news media is going to be information for us, but not decisions for us. It shouldn't be a place that we go to for emotional support, unfortunately. And that's why I say that worry is the worst thing that you can possibly do for yourself. So the one who trusts in God has no anxieties. It's such an important concept, folks. I hope that you can capture this message. I hope that you can capture this emotion. I said last night in the men's Farbrengen that when a soldier goes out to war, according to Torah, you're not allowed to fear. You're not allowed to have any fear. Because if a soldier goes out to battle, he's actually sent home before. A priest comes out and says, whoever's afraid should go home. Because if you have fear, it means you're bringing upon yourself terrible suffering, because you're removing God's providence from yourself. I just want that concept to settle into you for a moment. If you are worried about the stock market, if you're worried about the corona, it means that you're not trusting in God. And that's a very, very, very important place to be, which is in a place of zero anxiety and zero worry and zero fear, because you're filled up with trust. Think of the worry and the anxiety as darkness. And think of the trust as light, just like the sunlight is coming through to you. And if you're able to bring that light into your heart and into your mind, then all the darkness just vanishes to the point that you can come to a state. I know that God is always in control, no matter what goes on with Corona, no matter what goes on with quarantine, no matter what goes on with shutdowns and lockdowns and I don't know what else downs. When you're able to reach that level, it's a very, very beautiful place to be, because trust in God draws upon you God's perfect providence. I'm getting a nice comment here from Rob. President Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. How do we verify? Now, that's a really great question, Rob. So trust but verify means like this. First of all, in the case of Ronald Reagan, he was saying trust. I think he was talking about the communists. He was talking about the Russians. So trust human beings is definitely not what I'm talking about. So just to put the context into place, we say in the Psalms of King David, Al tivtachu v'nedivim, don't trust in generous ones, but adam she'en lo yeshua, in a human being who has no salvation. Never trust in a human being, because a human being is essentially something that you can't trust in. A human being is a dependent just like you are. You can only trust in one entity in truth, and that's in God Almighty, the creator of the universe. So in the context that Ronald Reagan said it, he was talking about human beings, and that's why it's a different kind of trust than the trust that you have in God. In God, you can have a blind trust. That's the difference. In human beings, you can never have a blind trust. You got to have a very guarded trust. But let's talk about, and that's why obviously you'd have to have trust but verify when it comes to human beings. But when it comes to God, when it comes to God, it's not a trust but verify. When it comes to God, it's like this. Trusting in God doesn't mean that you should never open a bank account. It's an interesting question. If you buy an insurance policy, does that mean that you don't trust? There was actually a story of a rabbi once. I think it might have been the Chafetz Chaim. I can't remember exactly. But there was a rabbi who was opposed to the concept of insurance, because if you buy insurance, like if you buy disaster insurance, it means that you think that something bad might happen. What's disaster insurance? That's catastrophe insurance. If something bad happens, then my family will be cared for. It means that you're like allowing for the possibility that something bad might happen. You're investing in that possibility, which means you don't trust in God. So do you feel that buying insurance is in conflict with a perfect trust in God? Now, it's a very scary question, because here you're going to be very serious about whether or not you really are trusting in God. If you're trusting blindly in God. And therefore, I want to say this to you. So my attitude to that is like this. My attitude is that I think you can buy insurance. And the reason why you can is because this is trust but verify when it comes to God. You see, God has a special caveat. God wants to remain inconspicuous. He doesn't want it to be obvious that God is the provider of our sustenance. He wants us to always have freedom of choice, and therefore he wants it to look like the money didn't come from him but through the real estate investment. He wants it to look like the healing didn't come from him but through the doctor, and he wants it to look like your legal success came not from God but from your lawyer, and that your military victory came not from God but from the army. So God wants to always remain inconspicuous, and that's why he wants you to go through natural channels. Because when you do go through natural channels, you allow God to remain inconspicuous. That after the 6-day war, we can sit and scratch our heads and say, well, was that a miracle? Or was it that the Israeli army is really so incredibly amazing? And I would answer your question, Rob, about trust but verify. Our trust is perfectly in God. But at the same time, we invest in lawyers, doctors, investments. We invest in all sorts of natural resources, like buying insurance, to make it look like the blessing doesn't come from God. The question here is, why are you doing it? Am I sleeping better at night because that doctor agreed to be my doctor? Or am I sleeping better at night because God is my doctor and this guy is just the medium? That's the verify here. And I hope I've answered your question, where your trust is only and exclusively in God. Yet when it comes to sorry, again, your trust is exclusively in God, but when it comes to your lawyer and doctor, it's then that you're realizing that they're only tools, and that's the key word here. They are nothing more than tools. Okay. Anyway, so back to this concept over here about moving along. Robin, insurance means I'm using a financial product created by others through the intelligence given them by God. In that way, I'm providing for my family in the event God feels we need to go through this event. Yeah, so insurance doesn't mean that you're making a plan if God abandons you. It's not to the exclusion of God. It's just that you're making a plan, which is a product, a conduit for God's blessing. And if that's what you mean, Robin, then I'm totally with you. We're on the same page. Good. I'm going to go a little further. Another advantage of working. Another advantage of working to be trusting in God is that. Top of page 361 if you have the book. Another advantage is that one who trusts in God is not hindered in his trust by wealth, for he does not rely on his money. Rather, he regards it as a deposit which he has been commanded to use in certain ways and for certain purposes for a limited amount of time. If it stays at length in his possession, he does not on its account become arrogant. He does not remind the recipients of his charity of the kindness he rendered to them, for he was only performing his duty. He does not wish to be thanked and praised for his kindness, but thanks to the Creator may be exalted for having made him an agent of kindness. Another very beautiful point. The money that you have, why is it there? So there's two relationships that we could possibly have with money in general. One relationship is that money is mine, I earned it, and whoever I give it to better be mighty grateful for my kindness, generosity. And a second approach is that the money is not mine. It's actually God's. God chose me as a trustee of those funds because God trusts me to use the money for the right reasons. The difference is going to be expressed by the manner in which you give charity. When you give charity, are you giving kindness or are you doing justice? The word tzedakah means justice. The word charity in English means kindness to the less deserving. And that's a very big difference. It's a paradigm shift. Am I giving charity because I'm being kind to the less fortunate, or am I giving tzedakah because I'm doing the right thing? See, God, the Jewish approach is like this, is that God provides. King David asked of God. He said, with the question that King David asked God was, what was the question he asked? He said, I forget the exact words, but basically King David asked of God, why are you not equal with all of your creations? How come you're generous to some more than others? Some people are rich and other people are poor. That was the question that David asked of God. If God provides for the needs of all flesh, then why are some people rich and some people poor? So God responds to King David, and this is literally, it's written in the book of Psalms. He says, I did so in order to create kindness in the world. If everybody received the same exact amount, then there would be no opportunity to do kindness with each other. What God did is that he debited the poor in order to credit the rich. He took the resources from the poor to give extra to the rich so that the rich can do the right thing with that money. God trusts the rich to do the right thing with that money, to give it back to the people that are poor. This is not wealth redistribution. It just means that you have certain obligations of tzedakah. You have to give 10% of your gross income to charity. And when we say charity, we don't just mean the Crocodile Foundation. We're talking about godly causes. Godly causes means people that are poor physically or people that are poor spiritually. Poor spiritually means providing to Jewish educational causes like a shul or a Chabad house or a yeshiva. Not to give to any cause like anything which is a 501c3. I think the Holy Land Foundation is a 501c3, even though it's really a front for Palestinian terrorism. So just because it's deemed by the IRS as a 501c3, it doesn't mean that it's a bona fide godly charity. And that's a very important concept to realize. So basically, the point I'm making is that if you have extra resources, if you're richer than other people, then what are you thinking? Do you think that you're richer because you're smarter or more deserving than other people? Or do you realize that God gave you extra resources because God trusts you as a trustee to do the right thing with that money? And your entire attitude to charity will be the litmus test as to what is your relationship as to what kind of trust you have with God. If you see the charity at tzedakah as justice, then it means you trust in God and that you're just the trustee of the money. But if you're giving this out of the kindness of your, because you're being kind and that you're expecting a lot of praise, that means that you don't really believe that the money was entrusted to you. You believe that you're just a very, very nice guy by giving it away. Not to diminish the people that give charity for the wrong reasons. I think you should give charity for the wrong reasons. You should do the right thing for the wrong reasons, because ultimately you'll come to do the wrong thing for the right reasons. Ultimately you'll come to do the right thing for the wrong reasons, because ultimately you'll come to do the right thing for the right reasons. So don't stop. If you're doing charity for the wrong reasons, keep it up. There was somebody once came to the Alter Rebbe, and he said to him, Rebbe, I've decided to be truthful to myself. I've realized that I'm giving charity for all the wrong reasons. I'm stopping effective immediately. And the Alter Rebbe says, I can assure you that the poor people are receiving the charity with the right intent, with the right kavanah. So just because you are a nudnik, it doesn't mean that they should suffer. So you keep on giving the charity for the wrong reasons, and the poor people will be receiving it for, with the right intention. But your entire relationship with money is a great litmus test, and that's what we're saying here in the Gates of Trust, is a great litmus test as to your relationship with God. Do you get stressed out about money or not? Do you realize that money is just what God is depositing with you? Do you give the right charity? So again, what is the right amount of charity? You're supposed to give 10% minimum of your gross income. You're supposed to, if you're a farmer, you're supposed to leave a corner of the field untouched. You're supposed to leave the forgotten sheaves behind for the poor to collect. You're supposed to leave certain kind of bundles. There's all sorts of different charitable gifts that you have to give away from your field or from your income. And when you do that, you're showing that God is your partner. God is not asking to keep 50%. If God is your partner, he's not asking to keep 50-50. He's asking to keep 10%. And he even gives you the opportunity to choose where you will give that 10%. But when you give away, I got to tell you, when I get income, what I do is anytime I get paid, what I do is that I automatically take 10% off the top into a charitable account, an account that I consider my God partnership account, my partnership with Hashem account. And that way, whenever money comes into my account, I automatically take away 10%. And I know that money is not my money. That money is God's money. And how I use that money is the greatest proof to God and to myself of my relationship with God. If I trust in God, then I'll give it away lovingly. If I don't really trust in God, if I'm stressed out about money, then maybe I'll use that money for my own reasons, and that will be a good example of my lack of trust in God. So I want to encourage you to consider doing the same, to have a charitable account that whenever you get paid, you transfer 10% to charity, and that is the greatest proof that you are trusting. And when you trust in God, it is a vicious cycle in a positive sense. The more you trust in God, the more God's providence is upon you, the more God's personal. This is the doctrine of blind trust. When you trust blindly in God, then God blesses you blindly without checking if you deserve it or not. And that it brings upon you the most greatest blessing. As we say, tracht gut, wird sein good, think good, and that will lead to being good. I see that Chana joined us. Hey, Chana, nice to have you with us. And Rob is saying charity is from the Greek word charitas, which means from the heart. Good. Okay. So charitas means from the heart. That's nice, which seems to indicate you're doing it because you're a nice guy, not because it's the right thing to do. And that's the key here, Rob. So that's the bottom line. Okay. Anyways, I'm going to stop over here, move to Hayom Yom. Moving over to Hayom Yom. We'll carry on with this tomorrow, God willing. Today is the 29th day of Adar. Hayom Yom reads as follows. My father said at one of the Farbrengens, this would be the 5th Chabad Rebbe, the Holy One, blessed be He, created the universe and all physical objects, yesh me'ayin, ex nihilo, something from nothing. Jews must transform that something into nothing. Transform the material into spiritual. The divine spiritual is a personal obligation. Every single person individually is required to do this. So God created the world something out of nothing. He took nothing and he turned it into something. Our goal is to turn something into nothing by making it spiritual. When you take money and you donate it to charity, to tzedakah, you're sanctifying the money. You're taking money and you're making it holy. When you take tefillin, leather, and you make it into a mezuzah or tefillin or a Torah scroll, you're making the leather holy. When you're taking food and you're separating the meat from the milk and the lettuce and you're keeping it kosher and you're doing whatever you need to do to check for insects and you're making it kosher, you're making that food holy. And that is our job as Jews, to make sure that everything that we touch goes holy. That's our goal. Every single thing that we touch is supposed to go holy. Bottom line. And God takes nothing, turns it into something, takes spiritual, turns it into physical. Our goal is to turn the physical into spiritual. And that's why you'll notice that Judaism is a very, very physical religion. It's basically a religion that's so physical that other religions don't even understand how Judaism could even be a spiritual religion. Think about it. Other religions, they do these fasts. They sit on a mountaintop somewhere in the Far East, and they don't speak to anybody for like 3 months, and they abstain. They abstain from a lot of things. The Muslims abstain from wine. The Christians abstain from the priests at least abstain from intimate relations. Both the Christians and the Muslims seem to glorify death. They glorify he who died for their sins, or those who die as martyrs are very big deals for Christians and Muslims. Basically, to abstain from this world is considered an ideal. As Jews, we say the exact opposite. We say, no, absolutely not. We say that you're supposed to violate the Torah in order to stay alive. You're supposed to stay away from shul. You're not supposed to. We shut down our shuls during coronavirus because we say don't put your life in danger in order to read the Torah, in order to say Kaddish, in order to keep the Jewish community strong. We say absolutely not. Nothing comes before human life, because Judaism is a profound rejection of death. And you'll notice that on Shabbos we drink wine before, at the beginning of Shabbos, during Shabbos, at the end of Shabbos. You'll notice that we are marital relations is the first mitzvah in the Torah. We are very, very much physically engaged in this physical world. Whereas other religions abstain, we Jews engage. And the reason is because, this is the point, to be Jewish, to be religious, doesn't mean to do that which feels spiritual. It means to ask to follow the will of God. There's a big difference between being spiritual and doing what God wants you to do. You see, being spiritual means like this. Let's talk about Shabbos, for example. So Shabbos is a day of rest, but the question is, how do you rest? If for you, rest would be going to the beach and listening to classical music on the beach. That might be a spiritual experience for you. But it's not what God wants from you. God wants you on Shabbos to eat cholent and to make kiddush and to daven and to pray and to spend time under a talus, right? And not to do the 39 kinds of labor, such as lighting a fire or whatever, the various labors of Shabbos. So somebody said this to me the other day. She said that keep Shabbos is something she wants to do, but to do that, she wants to listen to certain kinds of music. And I said to her, do you want to be spiritual, or do you want to do what God wants from you to do? To be godly is not to feel spiritual. We're not here because we're trying to feel spiritual. We're here because we're doing the will of God. And the will of God is that we're supposed to sanctify the physical world and to turn every physical object into something, which is to make it holy. How do you make something holy? To use a physical object for a mitzvah. That is our job as Jews. Every single thing that you touch should become holy, should be used for a holy reason. Even the food that we eat. Think of the cup of coffee that you had this morning. Why did you have the cup of coffee? Think about it for a moment. Did you have a cup of coffee because you were feeling tired, or because you wanted to have the strength to study Torah here with me? To be able to focus and not be tired. Think about that. It's the intent with which you drink the same cup of coffee that will decide whether that's a spiritual, a godly experience, a holy experience, or if it's just a spiritual experience. If it's spiritual, it doesn't mean that it's holy. It means it's spiritual. I hope that you can understand the difference. If you don't, please do comment in the notes here. Hey, Richard, good morning and welcome. And Sandy Friedman, good morning, welcome. Nice to see you. So I hope that you can understand the difference. That is our job as Jews. And I want to challenge you to think, how many things did you sanctify yesterday? How many physical objects did you sanctify yesterday? When you put a mezuzah on your door, you've made your home holy. That room at least holy. When you made a blessing on food, you've eaten mindfully, you've made that holy. My question to you is, how many things have you made holy in the past day? How many things have you made holy today? And how many things are you going to make holy? So maybe we can say this, that think about two things that you're going to sanctify today. Two physical objects that you're going to make holy with an intention that God took the spiritual and he turned it into physical. And our goal is to make the physical into holy. Right, by infusing the will of God into every physical object. And that's why the other religions, they criticize us Jews for being so physical. And there's nothing wrong with being physical, because God wants us to engage this physical world. Remember, if God wanted us to be spiritual, he would have made us angels. He would have created us in a world where we'd be flying angels and we wouldn't have any physical encounters, if that's what God would have done. If he wanted us to be spiritual, he put us in a physical world because he wants us to be physical beings. He wants us to get married and to have children and to make money and to have businesses and to have worries and anxieties and to overcome those worries and anxieties and to use the businesses for good reasons, for holy reasons, and to eat the food and to eat it in a mindful way and to have relationships and to make those relationships holy and meaningful and mindful. And when you engage with those physical things like family and money and business and politics and whatever, when you engage all those things for a holy purpose, what you're doing is that you're fulfilling your purpose in this world. And that's today's Hayom Yom. The first Hayom Yom for today 29th of Adar 1 goes as follows. A quick directive on the Haftarah for Shabbat. Vayichas Yada at the first and last verses of the Haftarah for Rosh Chodesh. We bless Rosh Chodesh Adar Sheni. Say the entire Tehillim in the morning. Day for bringing. Okay, the Hayom Yom goes as follows. It says that when you bless someone. Okay, quick note from Robin. 2 notes actually. I see on YouTube, I'm getting a note from Brandon. My father-in-law once had to fire somebody because he refused to accept the company's free insurance because he thought it showed a lack of faith in God. Fascinating. So your father-in-law had to fire someone who refused the free insurance ideologically because he believed that insurance was a lack of trust in God. And I can totally see where that guy was coming from. A very elevated sense. I take my hat off to this guy, Brandon. I take my hat off to him because I'm not there. I have to admit, I'm not at that level that I can say, I'm not buying insurance. Wow, I think it's extraordinary. To me, I've made peace with balancing buying insurance as a conduit to God's blessing instead of an opposition to God's blessing. That's how I see it, but I respect and admire this employee of your father-in-law who was willing to get fired by your father-in-law because he refused the free insurance. Fascinating. That concept is a fascinating concept. Why would you refuse a free insurance? I mean, why would your father-in-law have to fire him for refusing a free insurance? Couldn't he just make it his without telling him? I don't know. Back to Robin on Facebook. If I turn on the radio before Shabbat to play the music I want and don't touch it during Shabbos, is it okay? If no, how is this different than leaving a light on? Okay, so leaving a light on is certainly not a problem because you're not really engaging with the light at all. But when you are listening to radio, and by the way, during the quarantine, the Israelis and the rabbis in Israel are telling you to keep your radio on. So in case there's some incredibly important directive from the health ministry, everybody should hear it. And for example, during a war in Israel, they say leave your radio on a certain station where it's silent, and they use it only for Shabbat announcements. So if there needs to be like a red missile alert, if there's a missile coming, you need to know. You don't want to be finding that out later after Shabbos. You got about 10 seconds to go into shelter. So in Israel, they have these stations during wartime where everything is silent. It's a Shabbat mode. And only if there's some sort of incredibly important announcement, like a missile alert, will they make a siren or whatever. So during the coronavirus, they're telling people to keep their radios on Shabbat mode in Israel. But to listen to the radio, it's not in the spirit of Shabbos, Robin. What are you going to listen to? To music, to be entertained by music on Shabbat is simply not in the spirit of Shabbos. You're supposed to actually engage with each other, to look at each other in the eye. It is the most beautiful time in my home when nobody's looking at iPads or video games or computer screens. We're just looking at each other. It's the most incredible experience. It's called FaceTime, like real FaceTime. Not through a screen, but just face-to-face with no other distractions. So why would you want to violate the beauty of being able to talk to the people that you love face-to-face by turning on a radio? You could probably get away with it, Robin, if you really wanted to. I remember during the World Cup final rugby game in South Africa was a very big deal. Remember Nelson Mandela, brought apartheid down. And I was living in South Africa at the time. There was, the rugby team in South Africa was always white. And they represented the Afrikaans white people. And after Nelson Mandela, brought down apartheid, they brought black people into the team. And the whole country was supporting this, really brought the country together. So in 1996, I think it was, or 1994 maybe, when the World Cup final was in South Africa, it was in Shabbos. And South Africa was in the finals. And the Chabadniks in our community, some of them felt that this was too much of a test for them. They needed to be able to experience the World Cup final on Shabbos. So what they did is that they turned on the TVs before Shabbos, and it was in the maid's room, and they would go into the maid's room on Shabbos to watch the game. It was like a big test for them. But yeah, you could probably get away with it if you really wanted to, if you felt that was necessary. But obviously to turn on the radio on Shabbos would be a problem. So that's my answer. Okay. Anyways, Hayom Yom goes as follows. In responding to L'chaim, we Jews, we say L'chaim because they're sanctifying the alcohol. So we say L'chaim. Why do we say L'chaim? That's the question of today's Hayom Yom. What does L'chaim mean? The Gentiles, they say cheers. I'm not sure what cheers really mean. Why do they say cheers? Cheers. Cheers means what? Like cheer? Like we're happy now? I guess so. Maybe that's what it means. If you could look up the reason for that, if anybody could post the real reason why they say cheers, would be interesting. I can tell you that in Spanish countries, they say salute. Salute, which is like a salute. Why do they salute? It's very interesting. Why do they salute? Because salute came from the the Knights of the Round Table, of King Arthur's Round Table, where the knights would travel around in full body armor, like full body armor. I can't imagine how they moved around in that metal stuff. I guess it was called chainmail, and they were able to move around. But the salute came from the knights when they were covered entirely, and they needed to recognize friend from foe. How did they identify friend from foe? They would lift up the visor, the eyes. You know, when you look in someone's eyes, you can really see their soul. When you lifted up the visor, you could see their face partially, and you could identify who's who. So the salute that we do today is a remnant of lifting up the visor from full body armor to be able to identify somebody that you want to kill from somebody that you want to embrace. So it was basically an identification concept. Same thing goes for the clicking of the glasses. You know, when you click glasses, why do we click glasses together? The reason was that many people would drink out of distrust in yesteryear. In the olden days, you did business with somebody. You were bringing the money, they were bringing the goods, and you were doing an exchange, and you drank over it. So each one of them was afraid that the other was trying to poison them. If the other one put poison in your drink, then they wouldn't have to pay you because they would just take the goods and keep the money because you'd be dead. So how do you know that they weren't trying to poison you? That nobody was trying to poison the other? They would click glasses and ensure that your drink went into my drink and my drink went into your drink, and then we would drink simultaneously. By drinking simultaneously, we were assured that whatever's in my cup is now in your cup, and whatever's in your cup is now also in my cup. And it was thus that they were able to reach a state of mutual trust amidst a context of great distrust. So the Gentiles, therefore, who click glasses and salute, is coming out of a place of great distrust. But why do we Jews say l'chaim? From a totally different perspective. Here it goes. When we say l'chaim tovim u'lashalom. L'chaim tovim u'lashalom, which means for good life and for peace. The reason for this blessing is that the first time drinking wine is mentioned in the Torah, there were undesirable results. It says Noach came out of the ark and he planted a vineyard and he drank from the vineyard. It says over there that his third son, Ham, basically he either sodomized him or he castrated him. It's a nasty story in the Torah. Good morning, Lisa. Good to have you with us here on the Torah study. So basically, when Noah came out of the ark, there was some shady stuff going on between what his son did to him, because basically Shem felt that there were 3 sons of Noah and the entire world had to be divided by 3. And he was worried his father was going to have more kids and he'd have to deal with more competition to divide up the inheritance of the entire world. So he basically castrated his father so that he wouldn't have any more kids. A horrible story. And that's, by the way, why Noah cursed his son Ham. Long story. Anyways, it didn't go well the first time the drinking happened in the Torah. But bottom line, you get the picture, I hope. Also, the tree of knowledge, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, the tree of knowledge was actually a grapevine. Did you know that? The tree of knowledge was a grapevine, and Adam and Eve were created on a Friday. They were prohibited from eating the fruits of the tree only for a few hours until Friday night, when they'd be allowed to drink the wine and to make Kiddush on Shabbos on the grapevine, on the fruit of the tree of knowledge. But they couldn't wait. It was forbidden fruit, which is the most desirable. They had to have it now. God, give me patience and give it to me now, right? So the first experiences in the Torah with wine were negative experiences. Therefore, when we drink today, we say l'chaim tovim u'lashalom, for a good life and for peace. We extend the blessing that wine be for a good life, for a blessing, and not for something negative. That's the first reason that we say l'chaim tovim u'lashalom when we drink wine. The second reason, the Maggid of Mezrich, the teacher, the Rebbe of the Alter Rebbe, used to respond a little differently. He said l'chaim v'livracha, to life and for blessing. L'chaim v'livracha, for life and for blessing. Once that the Farbrengen, the Alter Rebbe, responded l'chaim v'livracha. After the Farbrengen Hasidim were surprised, they discussed this expression, which they had heard then for the first time. One Chassid proposed, since the Talmud tells us, quote, when wine enters, the secret comes out. When wine enters, the secret comes out, which in divine service signifies that the emotions are revealed. You know, when you drink, you let yourself out. You let your guard down. Who you really are starts coming out. When you drink wine, you want to get to know someone, drink with them and see the kind of words. If they start saying 4-letter words and shouting and screaming and being nasty, you know they're nasty people. But when they drink wine and they start speaking words of love and they start to cry, they start to laugh. You know that they're good people. You find out a person when they let their guards down when they drink, right? So since in divine service, wine entering, the secret comes out, refers to the emotions being revealed. We need a blessing for this, that the expression, that this expression is l'chaim v'livracha. Livracha should be read leiv raka. So l'chaim v'livracha can mean for life and for blessing, or you can read it for life and for a soft heart. Livracha can read leiv raka, which means a soft heart, a sensitive heart. So we bless each other that when you drink, it should be for life, and for a sensitive heart, we hope that the emotions that come out, whatever's coming out now, should be something beautiful, not, God forbid, something negative. The Tzemach Tzedek commented, such an interpretation could be proposed only by a chassid who has davened and labored in divine service for 30 years. That's pretty profound stuff, guys. Okay, I see a comment from Marty. Why is it always represented as an apple tree? Why is it always represented as an apple tree if the tree of knowledge of Adam and Eve was actually a grapevine? Well, the question is, Marty, where are you getting your information from? So, for example, if you go to the Moses statue, I think it's in Florence, in the museum in Florence, and what's it called again? I forget what that museum is called. But if you go to the Florence Museum to see Moses, you'll see Moses with horns on his head. Why does Moses have horns on his head? Because Michelangelo read the words of the Torah, which read that Moses' face was radiant after he was on Mount Sinai. His face was radiant. The word radiant also can be misread as horns. So Michelangelo decided that there was horns on Moses' head. And ever since then, the anti-Semites of the world are looking for the horns on the Jewish people's head. So you're talking about a bad translation. That's why, because it's coming from a bad translation. I don't think that there's a single opinion that says that it was an apple tree. There's different opinions in the Talmud. One says that it was an etrog tree. Another one says that it was a wheat, like a bread tree. Before the earth was cursed as a result of the sin of the tree of knowledge, bread just grew out of the ground. So it was wheat, it was a bread tree. Another opinion says that it was figs, and they used the fig leaves to cover their nakedness. But there is not an opinion in the Talmud, I believe, that says it was an apple tree. Maybe this Adam's apple might have been the origin for that. But I don't think that there's any normal explanation in the Torah as to why it was an apple tree. So there you have it. You always got to make sure you get your information from the right place. I remember somebody called in once to the radio show, the Sunday Shmooze radio show, very upset. He was like this litigation attorney from Long Island. He was very upset about something. And eventually I was able to neutralize him when I finally realized where he was getting his information from. He was reading a King James translation of the Bible, King James Version, which is obviously a Christian translation. I said to him, listen, whatever Bible you're using is just not the right translation, So most, the Christians believe that their God died for our sins and that he was somehow a human sacrifice because they're misinterpreting the verse in Leviticus, which is talking about animal sacrifices. They read it as talking about a human sacrifice, which is totally out of context. It's totally an incorrect reading of the Torah. But because they translated it that way, that became their truth. So what are you going to do? That's why it's nice and important to learn Hebrew so you know the original and you can't have anybody playing with you with any interpretation. And that's why when I teach, I love to quote the origin, the source. And I love to give you the actual verse so that you can see I'm not making this up. I'm giving it to you straight from the source. Okay. Another comment. Many paintings in the Met show an apple tree. Again, if you're getting your information, a lot of people get their information from Hollywood. Their whole Bible education they get from Charlton Heston or from Prince of Egypt or something. So that's definitely not where you want to be getting your information from. Like I always say, consider the source. Consider the source. I've decided to detox from all coronavirus, WhatsApp, social media messaging because everybody's sending me a message that says, I heard from a friend who heard from a friend who really heard from someone who really knows that this is what's going to happen and this is how many people are going to die from coronavirus. And I'm like, you know what? I'm so not interested in that kind of information anymore. Consider the source. If it's coming from a reliable source, I'm good. If it's not coming from a reliable source, I'm not interested. And the big question today is, what's even a reliable source? Everybody's looking for sensationalistic videos of announcements. This doctor found a cure and that doctor found a cure. You know what? Consider the source. It's very important to make sure you're getting the right information. Anyways, Lisa, Robin Weiss, is it okay to pre-schedule Alexa to turn on and off for you? music, lights, including reminder to light candles at the correct time. Very creative solution you got there, Lisa. Love it. So if you can, I didn't know that you could pre-schedule Alexa. That's kind of cool, actually, to pre-schedule Alexa. But I want to tell you even further. You know that with the driverless vehicles that are coming out of Uber now, Uber is starting to introduce driverless cars. Why do you need to pay a taxi driver if you can have a car that's fully automated? Imagine if you could get into a car that you pre-schedule before Shabbos to pick you up 9 o'clock in the morning, bring you to shul Shabbos morning, and pick you up at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock and take you back home, where you have no door to open, no lights to turn on. The car pulls up. It's got your name somewhere on a screen somewhere. It says, "Hi, Lisa and Sam. We're taking you home to this address. Just get in the car. You don't have to close the door." That would be amazing, right? I want you to know that looks like it's something which probably will be permissible. But turning on lights on and off is definitely not a problem. To use something called a time switch. You don't need Alexa to turn your lights on. It's been invented about 50 years ago, the time switch. That's not a problem. But turning on music again is an issue. Like at the shul here, we've got a problem with a microphone. When we do events in Shabbos, some of the speakers can't project their voice. And it's a problem because people want us to put on a microphone and put it on before Shabbos. You can't use a microphone before Shabbos because you're speaking into the microphone and you're actually generating electric impulses on Shabbos. So that's definitely not allowed, even if the microphone is turned on before Shabbos. The question is, can you play music on Shabbos? There are some opinions that say, maybe not so terrible. Certainly not our approach, because we're not looking to bring music in on Shabbos. Why would you need to bring music on Shabbos? Go a cappella. Shabbos is a spiritual experience, is a holy experience. Why would you want to bring in, all week long, we're addicted to our cell phones. We're addicted to social media. We're addicted to external stimuli. One day a week, we have this opportunity to look inwards, to draw our energy from within instead of from outside of us. Why would you want to take that one day, that sanctuary, and allow external influences inside of that sanctuary as well? It's kind of like you walking into shul and the rabbi getting up and giving a sermon about the Democratic debate or about the election. All week long, we hear about this garbage, this politics all the time. Why would I want to hear about that in my sanctuary, in my synagogue? I come here for a soul experience. I'm not looking to find ways to bring politics into my shul as well. We try to keep it a sanctuary. So Shabbos is your sanctuary. Keep it holy. I want to encourage you to do that. Marty's question. Why is it different than a personal limo driver? How is that different to a driverless vehicle? Very simple. Because if a non-Jew, look, certainly if it's a Jewish driver, you're not allowed to do it. You're allowed to have under extraneous circumstances, you're allowed to have a non-Jew do to violate the Shabbos for you, but you can't have a Jew violate the Shabbos for you. So there's a good story about this young couple. They're having a baby, and the baby's scheduled for Shabbos, and they're religious. It's the first time having a baby. They're all nervous, So they, it's a religious community. So before Shabbos, on Shabbos, he picks up the phone. He's religious. His wife's in labor. He calls up the taxi. And he asks the taxi company, please send me a non-Jewish driver. Because it's Shabbos. He doesn't want a Jewish driver to drive him to the hospital. Please send me a non-Jewish driver. The non-Jewish taxi driver arrives. And as he gets into the taxi driver, he hears a voice crackling over the radio. Did you pick up those anti-Semites yet? Because you don't want a Jew to violate the Shabbos for you. If you absolutely need to, in an emergency, you should ask a non-Jew who's not obligated to keep Shabbos to violate the Shabbos for you, for example, to drive you to a hospital or something. Even then, you're not allowed to explicitly ask a non-Jew to do labor for you. It's considered like you did the labor. The only way you can ask a non-Jew to do labor for you on Shabbos is if you do it in a way that it's not asking him to do anything. For example, if you want the lights turned on in your house, you can ask a non-Jew to come into your house, and then you say to him, it's really dark in here. And if he gets the hint and he's like, oh, well, do you want me to turn on the lights? And you're like, if he gets the hint and he turns on the lights, good. But you can't say to him, I want you to turn on the lights, because I can't. You're not allowed to do that, because that's considered like he did it for you. So that's the reason, Marty, why a driverless vehicle would technically be very, very different to having a personal limo driver who's doing the work for you. Hope that answers your question. I'm moving forward, folks, in the study of Talmud. A few minutes of study of Talmud here. We are in this book in Yaakov. If you just joined us, Torah study here. We are studying the book of Talmud. If you've never studied Talmud before, we welcome you. And I'd like to welcome Marilyn. Shalom, Marilyn Honigfeld, Susan's sister. Great to have you with us, Marilyn, studying Talmud with us. It's a pleasure. I'm delighted to have you here with us. And folks, keep the comments coming. Good morning, Sophie. Shalom. Nice to see you. Stay safe. Hope everybody's staying safe, far away from people, and keeping yourself, quarantined. We got to get through this and make sure everybody comes out safe. Got to keep Palm Beach and Florida safe. Keep this corona here out of here. So good to see everybody at least on virtual and not in person for the time being. Okay, so we're studying Talmud, and we're starting a new little section over here in the Talmud. If you do have the book, we're on page 74. This book is the book of En Yaakov. It's a collection of the stories of the Talmud without the legal component of the Talmud. And the Talmud goes on as follows. It continues the conversation that we've been having in the past few days, which is about the notion, the principle that God does whatever he commands us to do. Anything that God commands us to do, he's got skin in the game as well. If he asks us to lay tefillin, then that means that he lays tefillin as well. And just as in our tefillin, the passages in the 4 compartments of the head tefillin are written together in the one and only compartment of the hand tefillin, so too in God's tefillin, all of those passages mentioned above, those separated in the head tefillin, are written together in the one and only compartment of his arm tefillin. Let me explain what that means. Basically, we wear 2 pairs of tefillin. One is on the arm and one is on the head. They're 2 separate mitzvahs, 2 black boxes which have miniature Torah scrolls inside of them. The arm tefillin has 1 compartment with a Torah scroll inside. The head tefillin has 4 separate compartments with little Torah scrolls inside. In our tefillin, there's 1 scroll in the arm and 4 scrolls in the head. We spoke about yesterday how God's tefillin has verses which speak of the praise of the Jewish people, because you and I are the apple of God's eye, right? So what it says over here is that basically, just like our tefillin has the same verses in the head tefillin or in the arm tefillin, so too with God, that's all. Anyways, we continue into a new topic. Another teaching of Ravin Baravada in the name of Rav Yitzchak. Very apropos to the quarantine that's going on right now, because this forum that you're in right now is Torah study, which we normally do in the morning after our daily Torah, daily davening, which takes place at 7:30 in the morning. But obviously right now during quarantine, we can't come together as one. We can't daven together. So listen to what the Talmud says right now. Ravin Baravada said in the name of Rav Yitzchak, if someone usually comes to the synagogue and does not come one day, you don't show up one day, the Holy One, blessed be he, inquires about him to know why he did not come to the synagogue. If you didn't show up one day, know that God is asking about you. What happened to you? Who, as it stated in Isaiah, who is there amongst you who fears God, who listens to the voice of his servant, but now went in darkness and does not have light? If you don't show up one day, if there's a radio silence from you, God is like, hey, what happened to Joe Schmo? God actually asks about you, and that's an incredibly beautiful thought to think that. Some people think, who would even notice if I don't show up to shul? The Talmud is telling you, if you don't show up in shul, God Almighty himself inquires about you. The verse speaks about a person who fears God and comes to the synagogue daily and listens to the voice of God's servant, the Chazan, who leads the prayer, but now went in darkness, leaving on a journey before dawn without going to the synagogue. If he went on the journey for a mitzvah matter, he does have light. It's not considered that he went in darkness. A mitzvah is called a lamp in Torah. If you're occupied with the mitzvah, then you're not in darkness. But if he went for the sake of a non-mitzvah matter, if you're skipping shul because of a non-mitzvah matter, then as the verse continues, he does not have light. That is, he will not succeed in his effort to seek his livelihood. So if you go to shul on a regular basis and you missed one day, you're now going in darkness. It says, but now went in darkness and does not have light. It means you're not going to be successful in business. It's not a good idea to cut shul in order to spend more time in the office or to make more money, because if you do that, if you cut shul to make more money, the Talmud is telling us, quoting from Isaiah, it's not going to be a blessed day. It reminds me of that very beautiful poem. Let me see if I can look it up. That very, very beautiful poem which is about prayer. Let me see if I can find it. Really, really nice. Oops, a really nice poem here. Here. Here it is. This is I think a manifestation of this Isaiah verse. I got up early one morning and rushed right into the day. I had so much to accomplish, I didn't have time to pray. Problems just tumbled about me and heavier came each task. Why doesn't God help me, I wondered. He answered, you didn't ask. I wanted to see joy and beauty, but the day toiled on, gray and bleak. I wondered why God didn't show me. He said, because you didn't seek. I tried to come into God's presence. I used all my keys at the lock. God gently and lovingly chided, my child, you didn't knock. I woke up early this morning and paused before entering the day. I had so much to accomplish that I had to take time to pray. And that's a very beautiful poem about our actions being blessed when you do go to shul, when you do daven. So know that if you don't show up to shul one day and you're irregular, then you're setting yourself up for a problem. So don't miss it. The verse continues. Let him trust in the name of God. That is, what is the reason that he didn't have light? Because he should have trusted in the name of God that he would provide for him. And he did not trust in him by seeking his livelihood instead of praying in the synagogue. So basically, this is connected very closely to what we're studying, the gates of trust, the Jewish approach to conquering fear and anxiety. Because it says like this, why didn't he come to shul? Because why are you going in darkness? Because you're worried that you have to work harder in order to make more money. No, that's the problem. You're trusting in the money. You're trusting in the business. You're trusting in the other guy. Don't trust in the business. Let him trust in the name of God. The reason you don't have light is because you're not trusting in the name of God. If you did trust in him by seeking your livelihood from God instead of, if you did trust in God, then you would have found your livelihood through the blessing of God. By trusting in God, that would have brought you the divine providence. By turning your back on God and not showing up in shul, that showed that you trust in money. If you trust in money, then God says, okay, let's see how you manage on your own. Another teaching on this topic, Rabbi Yochanan said, when the Holy One, blessed be he, comes to synagogue and he does not find the minyan of 10 people there, he immediately becomes angry, since this shows that the community is not devoted to prayer and its members consider other matters more important. As it says in the verse, Hashem asks, why have I come and there is no man? Why have I called and there is no one who answers? That is, Hashem complains that there are not enough people present to form a minyan to answer the call of the chazan. Now, we live in extraordinary times today when there is very, very, very few minyans around the world. There are some Jews that are defiant and insist on making a minyan, even though it's dangerous. I do not begin to fathom the logic behind what they're doing. I do not understand why their religious zeal and fervor overrides their passion to save human lives. We live in extraordinary times today where you can literally save a life by doing nothing. I don't know when else this has happened in the history of the world, that you could be saving lives, the greatest mitzvah of all, by simply doing nothing and staying home. Yet there are some people that feel that they have to keep the minyan going. They have to come to shul. They've got to gather together in some sort of minyans that they arrange, sort of under the radar. They're kind of illegal. And they make these minyans in order to be expressive of their religious zeal. Yet they're obviously endangering humanity by doing that, because by spreading the virus, you could really be hurting people's lives. In any event, we live in times when there are many minyans that are shut down. And I'm sure that instead of God being angry that we don't have a minyan, that God is inspired by the beauty of the people of Israel, that we have put human life before anything else. What does a parent care about? Being respected by his children, or seeing that his children respect each other? What would you prefer as a parent? To see your children respecting you, or to see your children respecting each other? Obviously, any parent who's sane and healthy would far prefer the children to respect each other than to respect him. And when God sees that we've shut down our minions today in order to be able to give each other life, the gift of life, to curb the spread of the virus, then I think that God is inspired by the love that we're exhibiting to humanity. And I want to tell you this, that the quarantine in Torah is as a result of the sin of Lashon Hara, of speaking badly about other people. In biblical times, when you spoke slander, Lashon Hara, gossip about other people, you would go into a state of quarantine. Why? Because here you were separating between a person and his friends by speaking badly about that person. Therefore, you yourself went into quarantine. So the biblical quarantine was an opportunity to meditate upon how you can love other people unconditionally, how you can atone for your sin of causing strife amongst people and bringing peace amongst humanity. And that's what we're trying to do here as well, to bring people together. And by staying home, by shutting down our minions, we are certainly exhibiting an unconditional love for all of humankind, no matter their race, religion, color, nationality, or creed. We are curbing the spread of this virus and exhibiting an extraordinary love for all of humanity in fulfillment of what the Torah tells us to do in quarantine. May it be that just like our temple was destroyed through the sin of hating each other unconditionally, for baseless hatred and for unfounded, irrational hatred of other human beings. That's why the temple was destroyed. So too it says the temple will be rebuilt in the merit of irrational love for each other, unconditional and baseless love for each other. May it be God's will that you should see the way we love each other, the way we care for each other, by being so careful to literally shut down our economy, to shut down our lives, so that people will be safe. Random people that we never met should be safe. May God deem us worthy of the rebuilding of our temple immediately today, and the coming of the Mashiach, bringing the world to a state of peace and harmony, without any suffering, without any illness, without any loneliness, without any poverty, an era where there will just be the knowledge of God filling the earth like the water fills the sea, where we'll be able to live in an era of abundance and plenty and wisdom and culture and heritage in the most beautiful way. Folks, as I conclude today's morning Torah study, I want to encourage you to join me for the next session, which is our session entitled An Introduction to Jewish Spirituality and Meditations. It's called 10 o'clock. We'll come back at 10 o'clock. And don't go away. Please join us in just a few minutes, and we'll see you there. Thank you very much. Shalom.